morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Weekly Roundup. In Weekly Roundup, we cover the most important news of the past week. Okay, so let's begin the today's session. In today's session, we will be covering the 6 main news and 7 quick updates. In main news, we will be covering about the Digital Personal Data Protection Rule, which has been recently launched or notified by the center. In second main news, we will be covering about the Fasal Bima Yojana as government has introduced new update to the scheme. In the third main news, we will be covering about the tribunals as the Supreme Court has recently struck down some of the provisions of Tribunals Reform Act of 2021. In fourth main news, we will be covering about the recent judgment of Supreme Court where Supreme Court has said that Judiciary cannot impose timeline on president and governors. In last main news, we will be covering about the environmental clearance as the Supreme Court has recalled judgment which has struck down the ex post facto environmental clearance. Along with this main news, we will be covering about 7 quick update. So this is a brief about today's session. So let's begin with the session. So the first news is that center had notified digital personal data protection rule. Okay, so in this news we will be covering about these rules as well as the Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. Okay, so this is a brief and it is a part of GS paper 2 where syllabus talks about important aspect of governance. So let's begin the discussion for the first main news. Okay. We have already discussed the context in brief. Let us again discuss the context and why it is in the news. So it is in news because Ministry of Electronics and IT has notified the DPDP rules of 2025 and it has marked the full implementation of DPDP Act of 2023. In the coming slide, we will be covering about these rules, what is their significance and how they are relevant for you as well as how they are relevant for UPSC examination. And we will also briefly cover about the Act. You might know that the data is the new oil. That's why government need to regulate and protect the personal data of the citizen. So that is the basic aim of this Act as well as the rules. And these rules are in compliance with the Supreme Court 2017 judgment in KS Puttaswamy versus Union of India. On the same judgment, there was a UPSC question as well. We will solve that question in the end of the discussion of this news. Okay, so let's discuss about the rules which has been notified. So before knowing about rules, let us discuss about 4 key terms. One is data principles. Second, data fiduciaries. Third, data processors. Fourth, consent managers. It is very important to know these 4 key terms because it will be very difficult to understand the news without understanding these key terms. So let us understand by an example. Suppose me or you are putting something on Instagram. So we, the persons, are the data principal because we are providing the data. And Instagram here is the data fiduciaries as we are providing the data to the platform. And now coming to the data processors, suppose a third entity is processing the data which we have provided to Instagram, that will be called as the data processor. In this case, it can be anything entity like Amazon Cloudwork or some other organization or institution which is processing the data which we have provided to the Instagram. Lastly, consent manager. Okay. So the consent manager are the entities who are responsible for taking the consent when there is multiple fiduciaries are involved. So these are the four basic terms which are very useful for understanding these rules as well as these act. Okay, you should be very clear about these four terms. Now coming to the rules. First of all, let us talk about the data principles. So it reinforces the right of individual to assess, correct, update or erase their personal data. What it means, suppose I have given my data to some fiduciaries, personal data, Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. So suppose now I feel that this data is wrong. So I can say to the data fiduciaries that you have to correct this data. Or I feel this data should be erased. Then also I can say to the data fiduciaries that you have to delete this data. So that is the basic right given to the data principles. We have already understand what is the meaning of data principles. Secondly, it talks about phased implementation. So it will be fully implemented after 18 months. That is around 2027. But presently they have to establish the Data Protection Board of India, and other provision can be established or implemented in a phased manner by 2027. But Data Protection Board of India has to be formed now. That is the second main observation in the DPDP rules of 2025. Thirdly, it requires the consent notice. Suppose the data fiduciaries are using our data for some purposes. So they have to take consent from us. Suppose Instagram is giving our information to some advertisement company. So they have to give us the notification that we are giving your data to such and such company. Then we have to accept that consent, and the consent should be in very simple language. You might have seen the agreement of some of the fiduciaries that it is very difficult and in a very long paragraph. So most of the time what we do is we don't read the terms and we simply click on the agree button. So that should not be there. The agreement should be in very simple language and it should be understood by the data principles. Okay, that is the third highlight of the DPDP rules of 2025. Lastly, as I have already told you, there should be an establishment of Data Protection Board of India, and it will function as a fully digital institute. So when we have complaint, we can file complaint or track our complaint digitally on online portal as well as on the online apps. This should be established as soon as possible. So this is about DPDP rules of 2025. I hope you have understood the key highlights of these rules. Now we will move to the DPDP Act of 2023. Okay, so what are its silent feature and why it was bought? First of all, it set out the obligation of entities handling such data, and such entities are called as data fiduciaries. And it has given right and duties to the individuals, and those individuals are data principals. Okay, there was a question regarding this act. We will discuss this question in the end of the discussion, but whenever you are writing answer related to this act, you should write these terms: data fiduciaries, data principal. Then only you can enhance the quality of your answer. Otherwise it will become very generic and it won't fetch you that extra mark which you require to clear your mains examination. Okay, secondly, its scope, where it is applicable. First of all, it is applicable for processing digital personal data within India where such data is collected in digital form or collected in non-digital form and then converted into digital format. Okay, so its scope when we're talking about within India, it is for digital form data as well as the non-digital form which is later converted into digitalized format. First. Second, processing of personal data outside. If it is for offering goods or services in India, then also these rules and act will be applicable. That means data can be transferred outside the India. Okay, that is very important to understand. Data can be transferred from outside to India. Okay. That's why processing of personal data is happening outside of India if it is for offering goods or services in India. That is the basic. Now we will understand further about this act. Okay. Here it is talking about the obligation for data fiduciaries. Here data fiduciaries are the companies like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Okay, where we provide our personal data. It can be the edtech companies as well, the other companies as well, where we are providing our personal data. First of all, it have to take the consent of the users. That means it has to take the consent of us that we are taking your data, we are using in such and such format, and we will be inferring these information from your data. Okay, first point. Second, processing of personal data of children and person with disabilities. Requirement here is that the permission from the guardians should be taken. Okay, and the targeted advertisement for children is not allowed. What does this targeted advertisement means? Suppose you are using Instagram. You might seen often that whenever you are thinking to buy something or you search for something on your uh, Chrome or somewhere else, then also you will see advertisement related to your search on your platform. So according to this act, targeted advertisement for children is not allowed. It is very important that targeted advertisement for children are not allowed under this act. Okay. Lastly, it talks about enforcement. So enforcement, there should be a data protection board of India which will be having civil court power for personal data breach complaints. Okay, so suppose there is some breach in our personal data, we can complain to the Data Protection Board of India. That is about the enforcement of it. Okay, and there are other provisions as well, such as if someone is not using that account for a longer time, that means if there is inactivity in the account, the data fiduciaries have to delete those accounts. Okay, there was a news in recent time where it was saying on Facebook there are many accounts of the dead people. When they were alive, they formed that account. Now they are dead and their account is still running. Okay, so that was the news, and this was the major discussion about these rules as well as the act. Now we will discuss the PYQ related to the first news. So first PYQ is from 2018 prelims. It is very simple question and I think you might have covered your first part of your polity. Okay, and this is related to the polity only. And we have also discussed in our news discussion. So you have to solve this question in the comment section. And the question is, right to privacy is protected as an instinct part of right to life and personal liberty. Which of the following of the Constitution of India correctly and appropriately imply the above statement? So this is the question, and option given are Article 14 and the provision under the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution. Second option, Article 17 and the Directive Principle of State Policy in Part 4. Then third option, Article 21 and the freedom guarantee under the Part 3. Article 24 and the provision under the 44th Amendment of the Constitution. So you should know about these articles and to which article right to life and personal liberty is connected. So please write down the answer in the comment section. Then there is the direct question in the mains. So you can understand the importance of this act as well as these rules. Okay, and the question was, describe the context and silent feature of Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. At that time it was not implemented, now it has been implemented fully. So you have to be very careful when you are reading about this act and rules, because there are high chances then there can be direct or indirect question regarding these rules. Okay, so this was all about the first news. Let us move to the second news for today. So what is the second news? Second news is that the government has introduced new update to the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Okay. In this news, we will be covering about this scheme and we will be learning what are the new update to this scheme. It is very important for your examination, as it is related to GS paper 3, where the syllabus talks about the issues related to direct and indirect farm subsidies. So let us discuss the news. So first of all, let us understand what are the key changes introduced under the scheme. Okay. There are two major changes. Let us understand one by one. First, it has introduced new coverage. And what are things which are being added under this new coverage? So it has added that crop loss due to wild animal attack is included as the fifth add-on cover under the localized list. So you might have observed, for the crops, the wild animal attack is also one of the reason for crop loss. So that's why government has included these losses as well. And what are the animals who are responsible for major crop loss? In North India, these are nilgai, wild boars, monkeys, etc. And in South India, basically crops are destroyed by elephants and other animals. So that's why there is one more provision which has been added, that is that the state will notify the list of wild animals and vulnerable districts based on the historical data. So basically state will notify that which wild animals are destroying crop in which districts, and the vulnerability of those districts will be identified based on the historical data. So that is the meaning of this. Second key change, it is basically, it was there before 2018. This scheme was bought in 2016 and they have brought it back, and the provision was that the paddy inundation, that means the flooding of paddy, has been restored as a calamity cover. So basically you have to understand two things here. First of all, why it was removed at the first stage and why it has been brought back. So let us understand why it was removed. You might know that the paddy cultivation required submergence of paddy. And sometime there might be the cases where due to negligence of farmers, there can be over irrigation. And what does over irrigation lead to? Over irrigation lead to flooding. Okay. So it was very difficult for the administrator to quantify where there was the case of over irrigation and where there was the case of flooding. So it was leading to a moral hazard where there was claims based on the over irrigation as well. So that's why government has removed this provision in 2018, but now they have brought it back because it was observed because of the flooding in the paddy region, there was a major crop loss to the farmers. Okay, so now with improved technology and improved implementation, now they will improve it implementation in the case of paddy flooding as well. This is the second major change. And lastly, the update has said that the farmers have to report mandatorily in 72 hours by taking the photos and uploading on it digital platform. These are the key changes introduced under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. It is basically a crop insurance scheme. Now let us discuss about the scheme. Okay, about the Fasal Bima Yojana. So it was started in Kharif region, Kharif season of 2016, and the new changes which have been brought will be implemented by Kharif season of 2026. So for two reasons, this scheme become very important for your examination. The first reason is when you will be writing your exam next year, this scheme will complete 10 years. And secondly, it will be there in news because it will get implemented in Kharif season of 2026. That's why this scheme is very important for your prelims as well as for your mains. Okay. Now let us look at its type. It is a central sector scheme. On many websites, it is given as centrally sponsored scheme. Even on many state website, it is given as centrally sponsored scheme. But I can assure you that if there is a question in prelims examination or in the mains examination, when you have to write that what type of scheme is this, you have to write central sector scheme, because in the recent budget government has categorized it as central sector scheme. Okay, you should be very clear, you should not be confused, and it is a central sector scheme. And what are its aims and objective? First of all, as it is a crop insurance scheme, it will provide financial support to farmers suffering from crop loss, damage, stabilizing their income and ensuring flow of credit to the agriculture sector. That is the first aim. Secondly, it allow for innovative adoption of technology in agriculture, as the farmers are assured of income or the losses that can be there. So these are the two basic aim of this scheme. Now coming to the eligibility under this scheme. So first of all, farmers who have land, those are eligible. Secondly, sharecroppers and tenant farmers are also eligible under this scheme. It is very important. Sharecropper as well as the tenant farmers are eligible under this scheme. Okay. Now we will look into the other provisions of this scheme. Let us discuss about the premium payable by the farmers. There was a direct question based on this information in 2016 in prelims examination. So we will discuss that question as well. Let us first discuss about the premium payable by the farmers. So for Kharif crop, it is 2% and remaining 98% will be paid by the governments, shared equally between central and the state government. Okay. Secondly, for Rabi crop, it is 1.5% that farmers have to pay 1.5% premium of the insurance. And for commercial and Horticulture crop, it is 5%. So Kharif crops are monsoon crop and Rabi crops are winter crops. So for monsoon crop, premium payable is 2%. For winter crops, premium payable is 1.5%. And for commercial and horticulture crop, premium payable is 5%. And remaining premium will be paid by the central and the state government. Now let us discuss about the coverage under this scheme. So it is a holistic scheme which cover from pre-sowing to the post-harvest. So it cover the whole life cycle of the crop. When you are putting seeds in the ground, in the fields, to getting the products to your houses. Okay, so it cover all the cycle of the crop, from preventable sowing to standing crop production to post harvest loss coverage. So that is the basic coverage. Okay. Secondly, it provide for total protection. That means it also provide for localized calamities protection. That is losses from hailstorm, landslide and other identified local risk. And also there is an add-on for wildlife damage coverage that is notified by the state government, and it offer coverage against losses due to wildlife animal attack. So that is the basic coverage under this scheme. Okay. Now there are some exclusion as well, such as war risk. Suppose there is war going on, then there is damage to the crop, that risk are not covered. Then nuclear risk are also not covered, as well as the preventable risk are not covered, as well as malicious damage are not covered under this scheme. It has often seen that UPSC also ask about the exclusion. So you should be knowing about the exclusion under this scheme as well. So this was all about the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and its new update. Now let us discuss a PYQ related to this news. So the PYQ is from 2016 and the question is from prelims examination, and please write down the answer of this PYQ as well in the comment section of this video, because I think notification will be out in January or February and we are already there in November. You have to practice PYQ to analyze what type of questions are coming and why questions are coming in prelims examination. Okay, so let us look into the question. The question is, with reference to the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, consider the following statement. Statement 1. Under this scheme, farmers will have to pay a uniform premium. We have discussed this. The premium for Rabi crop, premium for Kharif crop, premium for commercial crop, okay, of 2% for any crop they cultivate in any season of the year. Second statement, this scheme cover post-harvest losses arising out of cyclone and unseasonal rains. So these are the two statements, and the option, you have to select the correct option. Please read down the question very carefully. Sometime UPSC ask about the wrong statements as well. So here UPSC has asked about the correct statement, that is which of the statement given above is or are correct. Option are A 1 only, B 2 only, C both 1 and 2, and D neither 1 nor 2. So this is the PYQ from 2016. You have to answer this in the comment section. Okay, please write down the answer in the comment section. Now we will move to the third main news for today. So the third main news is about the tribunals. And why it is there in news? Because Supreme Court has struck down some provision of the Tribunals Reform Act of 2021. In this news, we will be discussing about separation of power as well as about the tribunals and what are the provision which has been struck down by the Supreme Court. It is mentioned in GS paper 2, okay, where syllabus talks about statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies. Tribunals are part of quasi-judicial bodies. Okay. Now let us discuss the news. Okay. So the context of this news is that Supreme Court has struck down some of the provision of Tribunal Reform Act of 2021. And they have given basically two rationale before strike down those provisions. First, they have said that these provisions were reproduced from the Tribunals Reform Ordinance of 2021, which Supreme Court has declared unconstitutional before. So they have said that the act was brought by the center and there was some provision which was there in Tribunal Reform Ordinance, and Supreme Court has said that we have already declared this ordinance as unconstitutional. Secondly, Supreme Court has observed that these principles violate the principle of separation of power and judicial independence. So here question come, what is separation of power and how it is applicable in India? Okay, so basically separation of power means that there are three authorities in or the three organs of the government which works independently. And what are those three organs? One is legislature, secondly executive, and third judiciary. So legislature make laws, executive implement laws, and judiciary interpret the laws, and they work separately. But in India, separation of power is not rigid and there is principle of check and balance. What is the meaning of check and balances? That means one organ check and balance the function of the other organs of the government. So let us understand the principle of check and balances with an example. So this is legislative, here it is executive, then here it is judiciary. Okay, so executive appoint judiciary. Judiciary can say that the act which has been implemented by executive is unconstitutional. Okay. Similarly, legislative can impeach the judiciary and judiciary can say the act of legislatures or the legislative is unconstitutional. Similarly, the legislature can impeach the executive and there are other forms of check and balances such as question hours, parliamentary debate as well. Whereas executive check legislature by various functions such as summoning as well as the ordinance making power. So this is the check and balances in the context of India on various organs of the government. So there was a question regarding separation of power and check and balances in previous year examinations as well. So we will discuss that question as well. Now let us move forward to the discussion of this news. Now let us understand about tribunals. Okay. So basically they were set up to ensure specialized as well as efficient adjudication and speedy resolution of specific category of cases. You all might be aware that there is a pendency of cases in Indian judiciary. That was the one of the reason to establish tribunals, to make the judicial system efficient. Okay. Secondly, they were introduced as the part 14A, okay, by the Constitutional Amendment Act of 42nd. Please write down in the comment section what does the part 14 deals with. Okay, part 14A is tribunals. So please write down in the comment section what does the part 14 deals with. Okay, and there was two articles which was inserted. One is 323A and another one is 323B. 323A deals with administrative tribunals and 323B deals with the other types of tribunals. One more important information: administrative tribunals can be formed only by parliament, and other types of tribunals can be formed by the state legislature as well as the parliament. As administrative tribunals are formed by parliament, there is no hierarchy. But in the case of other tribunals, there is hierarchy. This differentiation is very important for your examination. Now we will discuss what are the provisions which have been removed by the Supreme Court judgment. Okay. Let us discuss the key highlights of the judgment. Okay, first of all, the minimum age of 50, which was there in the act, has been removed, and Supreme Court has said that it is arbitrary as well as it's violate the Article 14. Okay, for excluding younger qualified professionals. That was the first key highlight of the judgment. Secondly, they have said that the 4-year tenure which was provided in the act is not sufficient to make the job secure. So there should be a 5-year tenure. Lastly, they have said that center has to set up National Tribunal Commission within 4 months. And this commission will look at the implementation as well as the appointment of various authorities in the tribunals. Okay, so these are the key highlights of the recent judgment. Now let us move forward and discuss about the PYQs related to this news. So first PYQ is from mains 2018. It is a direct question related to tribunals. So question is, how far do you agree with the view that tribunals curtail the jurisdiction of ordinary courts? That is the first part of the question. Second part, in view of the above, discuss the constitutional validity and competency of the tribunals in India. So whenever there is a mains PYQ, please form a structure and think in that way that how you will frame the answer if this question is there in your examination. There is another PYQ as well from mains 2019. The question is, do you think that the Constitution of India does not accept the principle of strict separation of power? Rather, it is based on the principle of check and balance. Explain. So you have to explain this statement. We have discussed about the separation of power, and check and balance is provided in the Constitution of India. Okay, I think you will be able to solve these two questions of the mains. So this was all about the third main news. Let us move to the fourth main news. So the fourth main news is about that government has launched the National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance. And it is related to GS paper 2, where the syllabus talks about the issues related to health. Let us discuss this news. So here, first of all, the context. So the Union Minister of Health has launched the second version of National Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance. So there was first action plan was also there. It was there from 2017 to 2021. So this is the second national action plan on antimicrobial resistance. So let us discuss what is antimicrobial resistance. Before understanding what is antimicrobial resistance, let us understand about microbes and antimicrobials. So what are microbes? Okay. So basically microbes are pathogens like bacteria, fungi and parasite, as well as the virus. So those are the microbes. And it is not necessary that all the microbes are harmful. You might have heard about the probiotic curd. So it contains bacteria which helps in better digestion. So here that microbe, bacteria is helping in better digestion. And what are antimicrobes? So basically antimicrobials are those microbials which does not allow the growth of microbes, as some microbes are harmful as well. And the example is penicillin. Have you heard about the discovery of penicillin? It is very interesting. Okay, so it was discovered by Alexander Fleming in London in 1928. Okay, so he went for vacation and he left his petri dish in open. What is petri dish? Petri dish is a simple instrument on which basic lab experiments are carried upon. Okay, when he came back, he noticed that there was no attack of bacteria on that petri dish. Then he was curious that why there was no attack of bacteria on that petri dish. So he has found that there was a mold which has formed on that petri dish. That's why there was no attack of bacteria. He has found that bacteria does not formed on that petri dish because of that mold, and that mold contains the penicillin. That's how the discovery of penicillin was brought into. Okay. Now let us understand about antimicrobial resistance. Okay. So antimicrobial resistance occur when microorganisms such as bacteria, virus, fungi and parasite evolve mechanism to resist the drugs designed to kill them. So basically they get evolved, mutated and become very strong and evade the drugs which are there to kill them. For example, penicillin. They will avoid the drugs utilization which are there to kill them. Now let us understand the impact of antimicrobial resistance. First of all, they have become a global health threat because they are associated with 4.95 million deaths. In those 4.95 million deaths, 1.27 million deaths are directly related to antimicrobial resistance. Secondly, they lead to higher healthcare burden, as there will be cases that the basic antimicrobial will not be effective. So there will be requirement of higher antimicrobials, and that will require the research as well as the cost will be there. Thirdly, it will lead to slowdown of growth in the economy, because as the treatment will get delay, the person who is getting ill for 3 days, suppose he is getting now ill for 10 days. So there is loss of productivity of more 7 days. That will lead to inefficiency and slowdown of the growth of the economy. Fourth, they lead to delay in treatment as they can evade the basic medication. Fifth, there are other issues as well, such as food production, as they hamper the livestock population as well. They also lead to threat to the medical procedure, as well as there are chances of reversal of medical progress. So these are the impact related to antimicrobial resistance. Okay, now let us look into the National Action Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance 2.0. First of all, when we were discussing the context, we have said that this is the second antimicrobial resistance national plan. The first national plan was there from 2017 to 2021, and it is built upon the learning from the first national action plan, and it aligned with the global action plan on EMR by World Health Organization. Secondly, it include specific action plan for each key stakeholders as well as ministry department with timelines. So basically it talks about the accountability, and there are key strategies which include increasing the ownership of AMR related effort. Here also they are talking about the accountability. Secondly, enhancing laboratory capacity and infection control in healthcare facilities. So they are talking about increasing the laboratories and the facilities which are available in the laboratories. Thirdly, they talk about stronger engagement with the private sectors. They are saying that the private sector should be included in the research as well as the controlling of antimicrobial resistance. So this is the basic about the National Action Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance 2.0. Now let us discuss one PYQ related to this news. So one PYQ is from prelims and another one is from mains. So the prelims PYQ is, which of the followings are the reason for the occurrence of multi-drugs resistant in microbial pathogens in India? And the statement are: statement 1, genetic predisposition of some people taking incorrect doses of antibiotics to cure disease. Third statement, using antibiotics in livestock farming. Fourth, multiple chronic disease in some people. Okay, so the correct answer here is 2 and 3, because incorrect doses of antibiotics leads to mutation of microbes in our body. Also, using antibiotics in livestock farming also lead to antibiotic drugs resistance in humans. So these are the two correct options, and the answer is B, 2 and 3. Then there is a question from mains as well from 2014, and the question is: can overuse and free availability of antibiotics without doctor's prescription be contributor to the emergence of drugs resistant disease in India? What are the available mechanisms for monitoring and control? Critically discuss the various issues involved. So basically it is talking about the free availability of antibiotics in India even without the doctor's prescription. And it is often seen that there is a habit of taking medication without consultation of doctors in India. So the question is about that only, and they are asking what are the mechanism and critically discuss the various issues which are involved in this question. Okay, so this was the PYQ from the mains. Now let us move to the fifth main news. And the fifth main news is again related to the judgment by Supreme Court, and the judgment is that judiciary cannot impose timelines on president and governors. In this news, we will be learning about the judgment and about Article 200 and 201, and we will also briefly discuss about Article 143. It is related to GS paper 2, which talks about issues and challenges pertaining to the federal structure. Now let us discuss this news. So the context, as we have already discussed the context briefly, the context is that the Supreme Court held that the court cannot impose any timeline for decision of the President and Governor on granting assent to the bill under Article 200 and 201 of the Constitution. So in second article, we have discussed about separation of power. This is the one reason or rationale given behind this judgment, where they have talked about separation of power. Okay. And previously, Supreme Court has prescribed a time limit for the governor and president to act on the bill under Article 200 and 201. In the next slide, we will learn about Article 200 and 201. So previously, Supreme Court has said that there should be a prescribed time limit for governors as well as president to act on the bills. Okay. So now let us look into the Article 143. It allows president to seek the opinion of the Supreme Court on significant legal or factual question. The president can ask for the advice of the Supreme Court. And the advice given by the Supreme Court is advisory in nature. Okay, so it is not mandatory to implement those advice by the president. Those advices are advisory in nature. Okay, so this is about Article 143. Now let us discuss about the Article 200 and 201. Okay, so you might have studied the polity in your classes. Okay, so when a act or when a bill pass and it become an act, there is a simple procedure. Okay, so it has to pass by the state assemblies, then it goes to the governor. Okay, and governor has four options. First, it can assent to the bill and bill become act. Secondly, it can he can withhold assent, which effectively rejects the bill. The third option which is available for the governor is that he or she can return the bill for reconsideration. Okay, but in this case, please understand that money bill cannot be sent back for reconsideration. Money bill cannot be sent back for reconsideration. Okay, and suppose the state assembly pass that bill without change or with change, the governor has to provide assent to that bill. And the fourth option which is available to the governor is that he or she can reserve the bill for the president's consideration. So these are the four options which are available to the governor under Article 200. Now suppose that bill is reserved for the consideration of president and that has come to the president. Okay. Now president has three options. One, he or she can assent to the bill, then it will become act. Second, she can withhold assent, that means effectively rejecting the bill. Third, she can return the bill for reconsideration. Okay, so please note here that suppose the state assembly send back the bill, it is not compulsory or mandatory for president to give assent to that bill. Whereas in the case of governor, if the state legislature returns the bill or pass the bill again, governor has to give the assent. But president does not need to give the assent to that bill. That is the basic difference. Okay. So this was basic about Article 200 and Article 201. Now let us look into the key aspects of, key highlights of the judgment. First of all, the Supreme Court has said that there is no concept of deemed assent in the Constitution of India. What does this deemed assent mean? So, in the previous judgment, the Supreme Court has said, suppose the governor is not passing the bill or not giving assent to the bill for a specific timeline, that bill will be considered as passed. So, Supreme Court has said that there is no concept of deemed assent in India. Okay. Secondly, they have observed that the governors and president cannot sit on the bill indefinitely. Okay, so they have to take action from the option available to them. They have to take action as soon as possible. That is the second observation made by the Supreme Court. Third, they have said that there is a scope of limited judicial review. What does it mean? It means that court can intervene if the governor or president act with a malefied intent. That means with a wrong intent. Okay. So review is limited to processes but not merit of the assent. That is the third major observation made by the Supreme Court. Okay. Lastly, they have said that the president is not required to seek advice of the Supreme Court whenever a governor reserve a bill for her assent. So every time, or president does not require to seek advice of the Supreme Court for giving an assent to the bill when a bill is sent by the governor to her. So these are the four major observations made by the Supreme Court. Okay. Now let us discuss the PYQs. First of all, these PYQs are not directly related to the news we have discussed, but they are indirectly related. And please note that to qualify your prelims examination, you should be very thorough with the polity, because there are around 15 to 20 questions from the polity in your prelims examination. And to clear the prelims examination, you should be very thorough with the polity and you should solve at least 80 to 90% of the polity questions. Okay, so the first PYQ is from 2014. Very easy question, asking about the powers of Supreme Court. Okay, so the question is the power of the Supreme Court of India to decide dispute between center and states fall under its A. Advisory jurisdiction, B. Appellate jurisdiction, C. Original jurisdiction, and C. Writ jurisdiction. Direct question. Okay, so please write down the answer of this question in the comment section. Secondly, the second PYQ is from 2019. We have discussed about Article 143 in this news, but this PYQ is related to Article 143. Okay, so this is an question which is directly from Article 142. Just you have to write the answer that what does Article 142 refers to, or what does it deal with. There are the four options. Please have a look on the option and write down the answer in the comment section. Okay. Please solve PYQs. It will help you to better understand the topic as well as it will enhance your confidence to clear the examination. So the last main news for today is that Supreme Court has recalled judgment striking down the ex post facto environmental clearance. In this news, we will be understanding about EIA and environmental clearance. And it is related to GS paper 3, which talks about sustainable development. So let us discuss this news. So the context. The context here is that the Supreme Court in Vanasakti judgment before this judgment, there was another judgment known as Vanasakti judgment, has barred the granting of ex post facto environmental clearance. So basically in India, whenever we start a major project, there is a requirement of environmental clearance under EIA 2006. So we will be learning about EIA in the next slides, but there is requirement of environmental clearance. And suppose they or the project manager does not take the permission or environmental clearance and start the project, so they can even apply for the ex post facto environmental clearance with heavy penalties. But Supreme Court in Vanasakti judgment has previously barred the granting of ex post facto environmental clearance. That is the basic context of this news. Secondly, this ex post facto environmental clearance is provided under 2017 notification of Ministry of Environment as well as the 2021 Office Memorandum of Center, which was struck down by the Vanasakti judgment. Okay. Now let us understand the basic rationale behind this judgment. So the Supreme Court has said that it has ignored the legal precedent. And what was the legal precedent here? So Supreme Court has said that in previous two judgments, one judgment is D. Swami versus Karnataka State Pollution Control Board, held that post facto environment clearance can be granted in exceptional cases. So it has not barred but said that the ex post facto clearance should be given in exceptional cases. Secondly, Supreme Court in Alembic Pharmaceutical Limited case has discouraged the post facto environmental clearance but has regularized existing post facto environmental clearance with direction to pay heavy monetary penalties. And what is the legal precedent which has been ignored here? So these previous two judgments were given with a bench of two judges. And the Vanasakti judgment, which is against or which is in contradiction with these judgments, is also given with the bench of two judges. So Supreme Court has said when you contradict the previous judgment, there is requirement of more judges on that bench. That is the legal precedent which was ignored here. Secondly, Supreme Court has said that there is economic cost to this as well, as there are around 200 or around 300 projects which cost around 20,000 crore rupees to state and the center need to demolish. And Supreme Court has given example of AIIMS, Odisha, and one airport in Vijayanagar of Karnataka. Okay, Supreme Court has said that these projects will need to get demolished and it will lead to the economic cost to the state as well as the central government. And Supreme Court has also observed that demolition of these projects will lead to more pollution. So that is the another rationale given by the Supreme Court. Okay. Now let us understand about EIA and the ex post facto clearance. So ex post facto environmental clearance essentially allows a project proponent to continue with its project without obtaining environmental clearance prior to the project commencement. Okay, we have already discussed about it. We have said that they can start the project, then they can apply for environmental clearance. Okay, that is the meaning of ex post facto environmental clearance. The environmental impact assessment notification of 2006 clearly require prior environment clearance before a project can start. We have discussed about it. Let us discuss about what is the meaning of environment impact assessment. Okay. So environment impact assessment is there to minimize the loss to the nature because of economic development. Let us understand it with a graph. Suppose this is environment and this is time, and suppose there is a project and which does not consider the EIA. It is without EIA. So that is the total loss to the environment. And suppose there is another project with EIA, then the loss to the environment will be less when compared to the loss to the environment without EIA. Okay, you can use such types of graph in your examinations as well. Okay, so basically this EIA notification of 2006 list over 39 type of activities for which environmental clearance is required. And EIA categorized project into two. One is category A, another one is category B. For category A, the state, for the category A, the central permission is required. For category B, the state permission is required. Okay. And category B is further divided into B1 and B2. For B1, there is requirement of EIA. For B2, there is no requirement of EIA. So this was basic about the EIA. Let us discuss PYQ related to this news. Okay, so there are two PYQ from the mains examination. Okay, the first one is that achieving sustainable growth with emphasis on environmental protection could come into conflict with poor people's need in countries like India. Okay, as I was giving you an example of AIMS in Odisha. Okay, so such types of example can be written in this question. Okay, and it was asked in mains 2025. The other mains question is from 2022. The question is, the most significant achievement of modern law in India is the constitutionalization of environmental problem by Supreme Court. Discuss this statement with the help of relevant case laws. Okay, so the relevant case laws can be MC Mehta, where Supreme Court talks about polluters pay principle. Goda Varman case, where Supreme Court said that the definition of forest should be more holistic. So such types of example can be written in this question. So please read this question and frame answers for these questions. So this was all about the main news for today. Now we will discuss the quick update for today. So the first quick update is about Lake Turkana, and the context of this news is that the recent studies showed that the fall in the water level of the Lake Turkana due to climate change has led to increased earthquake activities in the region. So in this news we will learn about the Lake Turkana. First one is extreme statement that become important for your examination. The first statement is that it is the world's largest desert lake and the largest alkaline lake as well. This is the first statement. Secondly, it lies mainly in Kenya, but also the northern tip is extended to Ethiopia. Suppose this is Kenya, on its this border it is there, and some part is there in Ethiopia as well. Whenever you are covering such news, please look them in your map as well. Okay. So over 90% inflow come from the Omo river, which is there in Ethiopia. and Ethiopia has built many dams on it. That's why there is drastic decrease in the water level of the Turkana lake, and it has led to the earthquake activities in the region. That is the basic about the Lake Turkana, and there is a Turkana National Park site as well around it, and it is inscribed in World Heritage List in 1997. This was about the first quick update. Let us discuss the second news. The second is news is about systematic observation impact bond. Okay, so what is the meaning of impact bond? Basically, impact bond are there when the investment is based on the outcomes. So basically, impact bonds are based on outcomes. And what is the context? The context is that the world first impact bond on weather and climate data has recently opened for contribution. Let us discuss about this bond. So it will be announced as a part of COP30 of United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change Action Agenda. There can be a direct question in your prelims examination. And what is the aim of this bond? Okay, so it aims for financial instrument to strengthen resilience and early warning system worldwide. Okay. And it is pioneered by Systematic Observation Financing Facility, which is a joint financing facility of United Nations Fund, which has been created by United Nations Environmental Program, World Meteorological Organization, United Nations Development Programs. Okay, and its significance is that it will help 30 least developed countries as well as the Smile Island developing countries to meet global basic observing network. Okay, please also read about global basic observing network. Okay, it is under WMO. Please also read about it. If there is a question about the global basic observation network, there can be a question like under which this these standards are there, and what are the basic aim for those. Okay, these are under WMO. Now, moving to the next news. The next news is about Amaji marbles. And what is the context? The context is that these marbles have received the GI tag, and they are produced in Banaskantha district of Gujarat. Okay, there is an Amaji temple as well here. And these marbles are known for their white color and durability. Now let us understand about GI tag. What is the meaning of GI tag? So it is a certification given to products that originate from specific regions and have inherent qualities, reputation and characteristics contribution to their origin. You can look into the GI tags or GI product of your state on internet as well. Okay, and the are granted under Geographical Indication of Goods Registration and Protection Act of 1999, and its time period is for 10 years, which is renewable. Okay, that means after 10 years you can take the GI tag again. Okay. And the nodal department is Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So this was about Amaji marbles and GI tag. Now let us move to the next news. So next news is about leopards. And the context is that the MOEFCC, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, has granted approval to Maharashtra's leopard birth control program. And this is first time in India. Okay, so whenever there is such news, that species become very important. Whenever you are reading about some species, please look for pictures. that will give you clear idea about those species. Okay. So their habitat distribution is there in India, Nepal, Bhutan and part of Pakistan, and they are not there in mangroves, forest and desert. Okay, so they are not there in mangroves, forest and desert. Now let us talk about their size. They are smallest of big cats, and they prefer to live alone. Okay, they does not live in groups, they prefer to live alone. Okay, and they are nocturnal, that means they are active at nights and spend most of their time resting on top of the trees like this. Okay, and their conservation status in IUCN, it is near threatened, and they are part of Appendix 1, and under Indian Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 they are there in Schedule 1 as well as in Schedule 4. So this was about the leopard. Let us move to the next news. So the next news is about the base effect, and the context here is that some economists have said that the inflation rate in India has fallen low due to various reasons, including a highly favorable base effect. What does it mean? So, for comparison, we take something as a base. Suppose you are preparing for UPSC examination, and for some day you have set your base that I will compare my preparation as compared to that day. Suppose on that day you have studied very less for 2 hours. So the result what you will be getting will be more favorable to you. That means you will be thinking that you are preparing more than what is required. And suppose on that day when you are comparing, that day you have studied for 14 to 15 hours. Then it will lead to the negative impact and it will lead to demotivation that I cannot maintain the same flow. That is the basic meaning of base effect. Okay. And its definition is that the base effect refers to the impact of the reference point, which we have already discussed. Base year, month, data point or a day used for comparison on the outcome of ratio or percentage based indicators. Okay. And it can distort trend if the base period has abnormally high or low values. We have understand this with the example. Okay. Lastly, it is used to calculate the inflation data, GDP growth rate and other data as well. This was about this quick update. Let us discuss the next quick update. Okay, so the next quick update is about National Water Award. And the context here is that in the category of best state, Maharashtra has been ranked first, followed by Gujarat and Haryana under the 6th National Water Awards. So this is one of the category under 10 categories, and the other categories include best district, best village, panchayat, best urban local bodies, best school or college, best industries, etc. So under the category of best state, Maharashtra has been ranked first, followed by Gujarat and Haryana. And these awards are instituted by the Department of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, which is a department under Ministry of Jal Shakti. And they aim to create awareness among people about importance of water, because you might be knowing about the issue of scarcity of water. So these awards are there to increase the awareness. Okay. This was about these awards. Now let us discuss the so the last quick update is about protected area permit, and the context is that the Nagaland Chief Minister has urged the Union Home Minister to urgently review the reimposition of protected area permit regime. So in this news we will be learning about these permit. Okay, so these permits are special permit required for the foreigners. Okay, there is another permit as well, that is inner line permit. Those permits are there for Indian citizens and issued by the state government. That is about inner line permit. And protected area permit are issued by Union Ministry of Home Affairs. Okay, and area covered under protected area permit are all areas falling between the inner line and the international border of the state. It is required for many states, for example, Rajasthan, Assam, even some part of Uttarakhand, Jammu Kashmir, as well as in the northern eastern region of India. Okay, so this was about the protected area permit. Okay, so this was all about the discussion for today. So for reading further, you can visit our website Digital Current Affairs and solve the smart quizzes there. Thank you and all the best for your preparation.